Hey gang, it's Nash here. Hope you're having a lovely morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're located. And it's super good to have you here. And I'm sure you're here because of my clickbait thumbnail, which has then worked as intended, which makes me feel good. So immediately, let's get to the topic of that thumbnail. And no, I don't think there's a problem with Battlefield 6. And the reason for that is that the game isn't out yet. And that it's probably not in our hands for another year, realistically, before we're playing that. Of course, we'll see more content as it comes out, aside from this, current leaked gameplay footage, which is just a snippet. It's so minimal, what we've already seen so early on. So I'm not really putting all my eggs in any basket when it comes to how this game is shaping up right now. From the gameplay already, though, I think it looks cool. I don't know. I have nothing really to add to it other than I'm super pumped for a new Battlefield, and the gameplay looked cool. So, let's leave it at that for now. Which kind of brings me to the point of this video. Since that footage has released, I've been seeing a slew, an influx of content creators really jumping on that negative hype train, which is pretty common anymore, surrounding video games, anything, any franchise type thing, that's been a little rocky. People are always right there immediately to start nitpicking everything, and, rightfully so. That stuff happens. It's what we all want to talk about and discuss, these topics, but I think there's a threshold for when that's okay and when it's purely just ridiculous. And I think right now the Battlefield 6 topic, the gameplay leaks, I think it's ridiculous to be critiquing that stuff already, saying there's problems, saying there's issues that need to be fixed. And I'm not making it up. That's the whole point of this video, is to address these content creators, peddling out this content, if you will. Air quotes went up around content. It's to garner clicks. It's to garner attention. And again, I guess fair play. That is what YouTube is. Let's try to maximize our engagement, maximize our interactions with subscribers and whatnot, viewers. And okay, sure, I get it. I do, but even I have limits to what I think is, again, content and what is just fodder, basically, no substance to it, just to try to get a little piece of that YouTube action, somehow increase viewers, subscribers, yada yada. So yeah, that is what the internet does, though, bases things off minimal information, and then these wild speculations come about from it. It's not about just the clicks, though. It's not just about the viewers, the subscribers, feeding into this. It's about setting people up for disappointment, though, too. When these videos come out and creators are, smashing these new IPs, these new additions to franchises into the ground already, it kind of sets the ball in motion, in my opinion. And we've seen it in the past. There's a hype train for something where it isn't the positive hype that we're looking for. It's kind of like this negative little rain cloud that's just always there, waiting for the next thing to drop, the next bit of information to critique it and find what's wrong within that. And I think it's unhealthy, and I think it really actually sets up the game itself for failure. And again, it's totally fair to critique things, and it's totally fair to analyze, the footage that we're seeing. But I think it's really unfair to, at this point, already kind of grab it by the throat and not give it any room to breathe, and this is just from what I've seen. I'm not saying every content creator is doing this, because they are not. I've been watching tons of content that's really positive, really uplifting, hopeful, that Battlefield is really good. I hope that, and I know a lot of other people hope that. The fan base is huge for Battlefield, so I think everyone has their fingers crossed that DICE learned their lesson, EA learned their lesson, and mainly EA learned their lesson. Let's be honest. You know, EA is the one pulling the strings here. DICE is the workhorse. EA is the boss, respectively. Don't come at me with, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, I'm not a developer. I don't work in the video game industry, but EA is the publisher. They say when they want it out, you know, they make the financial calls for the most part. Okay, anything that has to do with where revenue is coming from the title is from the publisher. You know, the developer is responsible for the meat and potatoes of it. You know, what we're playing, what we have in our hands is DICE, you know, and their studios that you know, handle the development of the game. EA, though, they are the ones that are keeping the lights on at DICE. So they are making the calls about the microtransactions, yada yada. I'm not going to get into it because it's a dead horse, and we've been beating it to death forever. The microtransactions are not going to change, and that is a tangent for another video, which I will never make because I think that is also a garbage topic. So, but yeah, this hype train for Battlefield 6 and the gameplay. These creators saying we need to change this, we need to change that. Looks like it's in rough shape. Why are we doing this, and why are we feeding into this? You know, as viewers, because I myself am a viewer. You know, I'm a subscriber to channels, and I don't agree with everything. And I think that it's also pretty common way of working where we just kind of get complacent and we're just listening to these voices that, you know, we're used to, these creators that for the most part, you know, we put our trust into, and we, you know, share similar values or opinions with them. So, you know, we get comfortable, and that's a nice thing, I think. But, you know, and I mean that. I think that it's a really nice thing to find creators that we relate to, because, you know, it's a pastime. You know, it's also a way to relax. You know, I'd like to sit down at the end of the day and watch a couple videos, and, you know, feel like I know the person that is giving me this information or has created this bit of entertainment for me. And when it resonates, that's a good feeling. You know, that's good content. But this kind of stuff, this negative hype train business, yeah, I'm not for it. And I think that it leaves everyone feeling disappointed when certain milestones are met by the developer. You know, and yeah, I think that it's a bad thing for the industry. I think it's a bad thing for the developers, etc. And I do think that it's unfair. With that said, DICE, their studios, the development of the game, you know, it does need to be critiqued for sure. Look what happened last time with 2042. What a mess. So yeah, it's not a get out of jail free card. I'm not saying that, you know, hey, stop picking on this developer, yada yada, they don't deserve it. They deserve to have, you know, their work scrutinized, I think, for sure. But let's do it in a way that makes sense. You know, let's not use gameplay leaks as that catalyst to say this and this is wrong. You know, it's like review bombing almost already, you know, and the product isn't out. So yeah, it feels very unwarranted, and it just feels cheap. I'm sorry, it feels cheap to use this as content to peddle to the audience, because yeah, it's such an opinion, but then it becomes fact, or it becomes, you know, the narrative for this title, you know, coming up. And it's just, yeah, I share my opinions and people don't agree, and that's fine. You don't have to agree with my opinion on it, but this is just kind of my feelings on this specific thing. It just irked me when I saw all these videos popping up, like, you know, garnering thousands of views within a week. You know, it's just, I don't know, it feels cheap, it feels tacky, and it feels very low effort. You know, if you're happy with eating low-hanging fruit, then so be it. You know, if that's your thing, fine, and that's okay. I don't care personally, but, you know, let's put our best efforts forth, I think, in what we do, and that's what I try to do with my content. So Maybe you don't agree, maybe you do, but you know, I make sure my content is genuine and it's something that I believe in. You know, otherwise I'm not going to put it up on the internet for thousands to see and watch. You know, yeah, just kind of how I feel about it. I like to go to sleep knowing that, you know, I didn't half-ass anything that day. So yeah, would love to hear your thoughts on this. Would love to hear your you know, feedback. Give me your comments. How are you feeling about the Battlefield 6 gameplay leaks? You know, what are your thoughts? And yeah, speculate if you want to a little bit, but let's keep it rational and realistic. You know. And with that said, I'll let you get to the rest of this video. Hope you enjoyed the gameplay in the background as I ranted, and I really appreciate all of you. If you did take the time to watch this and listen. And yeah, continue having a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're located. And I'll see you in the next video. Be good to each other, and peace.